So let me tell you about this one night that still freaks me out. It happened the summer before I moved out of Edgewater, a small kinda run-down suburb outside Chicago. Not much ever happened there, so me, my cousin Marcus, and our two friends, Tasha and Bree, would just drive around town late at night looking for stuff to do. You know, typical bored teen stuff. There was this old house about 3 blocks from where I used to live. Everyone called it the Never House, because construction started on it like 10 years ago, and then just stopped. No one really knew why. It just sat there. No doors, no windows, no driveway. Just a hollow, half-built 2-story house with peeling Tyvek wrap, broken plywood everywhere, and weeds so tall they looked like they'd eat your legs. The weirdest part? People said the inside looked finished. Like not totally done, but weirdly livable. And the outside just stayed a mess. There were always rumors about that place. Haunted, cursed, used for rituals, that kind of stuff. Kids dared each other to go in, but no one really did. Not seriously. Until that night. We were driving around blasting music, eating fries from the gas station, just messing around. Then Marcus said, "Yo, let's check out the Never House, for real this time." I thought he was joking, but Tasha's eyes lit up like it was the best idea ever. Bree, who usually didn't like this kind of thing, shrugged and said, "As long as it's quick." So yeah, we did it. We parked about a block away and walked the rest of the way in the dark. The street didn't have many lights, and the ones it had were either busted or flickering. Most of the houses on that block looked empty or abandoned. One had a car in the driveway covered in leaves and dirt, like it hadn't moved in years. We stayed quiet, trying not to make noise. The night was dead silent except for the crunch of weeds under our shoes. As we got closer, I started feeling weird. Not scared exactly, but like heavy. Like the air around the house didn't want us there. The house looked even worse up close. The porch was warped. The front door was missing entirely, and a sheet of plastic hung where the window should have been. We stepped inside one by one. The moment we crossed that threshold, it was like the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Inside it smelled awful, like wet wood, mold, and something else. Something sharp and sour, like cat pee mixed with rotting meat. The first floor looked weirdly intact. The floors were dusty but smooth. Drywall had been installed in some rooms. There were no lights, but someone had once wired for them. The wiring stuck out of the walls like veins. "I thought this place wasn't finished," Bree said. "It's not," Marcus replied. "But it looks like someone's been living here." That idea freaked us all out a little. We split up to look around. Probably not smart, I know, but we were curious. Tasha and Bree checked out the front rooms. Marcus started poking around near what looked like a future kitchen. I went upstairs. The second floor was colder than the first. No insulation, just wooden beams and open spaces. The moonlight came through the gaps in the plywood, casting weird shadows that moved every time I did. It was hard to tell if it was me moving or something else. I stood at the top of the stairs for a second listening, and that's when I heard it. A whisper. I couldn't tell what it said, but it sounded like it was coming from behind one of the unfinished walls. I froze. I didn't want to call out in case it was one of my friends playing a trick, but my gut told me it wasn't them. Suddenly, I heard footsteps downstairs, fast ones. Someone running. I turned and rushed down, thinking maybe someone got hurt. Halfway down the stairs, I bumped into Tasha. "There's a door under the stairs," she whispered. "I think it goes to the basement." "Why are you whispering?" I asked. She looked pale. "Because I heard something down there." Now, of course, Marcus wanted to check it out. "It's probably just rats," he said, already yanking the door open. The smell that hit us was 10 times worse than before. Sour, rotten, thick, like something had died and never been moved. We covered our noses and Marcus led the way down with the flashlight on his phone. The stairs creaked like they hadn't been used in years. At the bottom was a wide, unfinished basement with a stained concrete floor. The smell was strongest here. Dude? Marcus pointed to the far corner. There was a small wooden chair and an old table. Sitting on the table was a thick, worn Bible, the kind you see in horror movies. Next to it was a candle, burnt down to a stub, and what looked like dried wax or blood on the floor. "Okay, I'm out," Bree said from behind us. Just then, we heard footsteps again, but this time they were coming down the stairs. "Is that one of you?" I asked. No answer. I turned around. No one was on the steps. Then I saw her. A woman, sitting against the far wall in the shadows. Long black hair covering most of her face. She was barefoot, knees pulled up to her chest, arms wrapped around them. Her head tilted just slightly, watching us. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Then her mouth moved. No sound came out, but I swear I saw her whisper something. And then the lights flickered, only there were no lights. A high-pitched scream came from upstairs. "Tasha," and Marcus grabbed my arm, yelling, "Run!" We bolted. I didn't even look back. We shoved past each other, getting up the stairs, Bree right behind us. We ran out. The back of the house, through the weeds and down the street to the car. Hearts pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. We got in and slammed the doors. No one said a word for a full minute. Then I asked, "What did you see?" Tasha finally answered. "I went into one of the side rooms, and there were two guys in there, just standing, not moving, not talking, just staring at the wall. There were dark bags or sacks on the floor next to them. I don't know what was in them. I didn't wait to find out." We drove in silence for a while. The longer we were away from that house, the more we could breathe again. I never went back. None of us did. We looked it up online later, trying to figure out who owned it, but there was nothing. No permits, no address listed. It was like it didn't exist on paper. The last time I checked Google Maps, this was in 2022, the house was still there. Still unfinished, still rotting. Some nights I wonder if that woman is still sitting in the basement or if she ever left. Let me tell you something that happened a few summers back. Something I don't talk about much anymore. Not because I forgot, but because I can't. I live in a small town called Pine Mill, one of those peaceful places with wide streets, trimmed lawns, and neighbors who wave at each other but don't really know one another. Nothing ever really happens here, or at least nothing used to. Back in 2016, my cousin Leo and I were spending the summer at my grandma's place. She lives near the edge of Pine Mill, right where the houses start to thin out and the woods take over. It's the kind of town where kids grow up and move away, and old folks sit on their porches and talk about the weather. Pretty quiet, pretty boring. Leo and I were both 17. We'd always been close, even though we lived in different states most of the year. That summer we were inseparable, biking around town, playing video games, and staying up way too late watching scary movies we probably shouldn't have. There's this creepy old house up on Garrison Hill that people around town call the Dagger House. Nobody lives there, and nobody really knows who used to. Some say it used to belong to a mortician who lost his mind. Others say it was part of a funeral home since it's right next to the old Millgrave Cemetery, the largest in the county. It's huge, hundreds of cracked tombstones, crumbling statues, and graves so old the names have worn away. The Dagger House has been abandoned for decades. Broken windows, vines growing up the walls, pieces of the roof missing. It's a mess. Of course, kids have always dared each other to go inside. Some claim they've heard voices or seen lights flickering inside at night. Most of those stories are probably made up, or at least I thought they were. One night, sometime around 3 a.m., we were on summer break, so sleep schedules didn't exist. Leo and I were bored out of our minds. We'd made plans to meet up with some girls, but they flaked last minute, so we decided to do something dumb. Head up to the Dagger House. We told ourselves we just wanted to check it out again. Leo had only seen it from a distance, and I figured it would be a cool, creepy distraction. We threw on hoodies, grabbed flashlights, and walked out into the warm, quiet night. The streets were empty. The moon was bright and the whole town felt like it was holding its breath. It took about 20 minutes to walk there. As we climbed the hill, the house came into view, just as creepy as ever. The bricks were stained and cracked, and the windows looked like black holes. One of the upstairs ones was completely shattered, and the roof had caved in on one side. Even from a distance, you could feel something was off, like the place was watching us. I remember Leo picking up a rock and chucking it at one of the upper windows. It smashed through with a loud crack, and we both laughed. I grabbed a rock too and nailed one of the lower ones. We were acting like little kids trying to scare off boredom. Then Leo pointed to a tiny window right at the top, probably the attic. "Bet you can't hit that one," he said. Challenge accepted. I tried, missed, tried again, missed worse. After my 5th try, Leo grinned and threw. Nailed it. The glass exploded and the sound echoed in the still air. We were laughing when something weird happened. From the attic window, the one Leo had just broken, something came flying out. It didn't fall. It was thrown, hard. It landed near our feet, rolling to a stop on the gravel. It was the exact same rock Leo had thrown. We knew because it had this weird white scrape mark on it, shaped kind of like a lightning bolt. We'd seen it earlier. At first, we just stared at it, confused. Then Leo said, "What the hell?" We both looked up at the attic window. Nothing there. Just darkness. That should have been our cue to leave, right? But nope, we were teenagers. Dumb, curious, a little full of ourselves. We figured maybe some other kids were already inside and trying to mess with us. That idea actually made it more exciting. So, naturally, we decided to go in. The front door was hanging half off its hinges. We ducked under some vines and pushed it open. It made this awful creaking noise like the house was groaning at us. Inside it was pitch dark. The flashlight beam cut through thick dust and floating specks, lighting up rotten floorboards and graffiti-covered walls. It smelled awful, like wet wood and something worse underneath. Something sour and decaying. We crept up the stairs, trying to be quiet, but the steps squealed with every move. The deeper we went, the heavier the air felt, like it was pressing down on our shoulders. At the top of the 3rd floor, we saw a narrow staircase going up to the attic. I'd never noticed it before. Leo went first. I followed. At the top was a small wooden door. Leo looked back at me. I nodded, though my stomach was twisting in knots. He turned the knob and pushed. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the attic. The smell hit us like a punch. It was worse than anything I'd ever smelled. Rotting meat, damp mold, something old and foul. Leo gagged and covered his face with his sleeve. I hesitated, but I wasn't about to let him go in alone. The attic was small, with slanted ceilings and exposed beams. On the floor, someone or something had painted a large white symbol. It looked like a pentagram, but not quite. The lines were sharper, twisted in odd ways. Candles, all burnt down, circled the symbol. A closet sat in the corner with its door half open. That's where the smell was coming from. "Don't open that," I whispered, though Leo hadn't moved. The room was empty. No kids, no pranksters, just that awful symbol and the closet. That's when I turned around. Down the attic stairs, just at the edge of the shadows, stood 2 figures. They were tall, motionless, and completely covered in black robes. Hoods covered their faces. They were just staring. I couldn't breathe. "Leo," I whispered, barely able to get it out. He looked, froze. Then everything happened at once. Footsteps, heavy, fast, started pounding up the stairs behind the robed figures. More were coming. "Go," Leo yelled. He ran to the attic window and climbed out onto the roof. I followed without thinking. The roof was steep, and one wrong move could send us sliding off into the trees below. We ran across it, trying not to look down, heading for a hatch we'd seen before that led back inside the house on the far end. We reached it. Leo grabbed the handle and yanked. It didn't budge. "Locked," he hissed. Then we heard it. A voice, deep and echoing from below. It didn't sound right. It sounded wrong. They went that way. It wasn't just deep. It sounded like it wasn't meant to come from a human throat. I didn't even think. I raised my foot and stomped on the hatch. It cracked. I stomped again and the door gave way. I fell halfway through, grabbing the sides of the opening to stop myself from dropping like a rock. Leo reached down and helped pull me through. We scrambled down the ladder, ran through the third floor, and tore out the back door. We didn't stop running until we hit the cemetery. You wouldn't think hiding. Let me tell you about the night I stopped messing around with creepy places for good. It was back in 2014. I was a junior in high school, and me and my best friend Mason were tight with a group of older kids from the next town over. One of them, this guy named Tyler, had a car and always took us on weird little night missions, breaking into abandoned places, ghost hunting, you name it. We thought we were so cool, so fearless. One weekend, Tyler told us he had the perfect spot to explore, Ravenshade Hospital. Just saying the name sounded like something from a horror movie. It was this old, shut-down hospital out in the woods near a dried-up lake. It had been closed for years, decades even. Rumors flew around our town about what went down there. Some people said it closed because of budget cuts. Others swore it was haunted because patients had gone missing or died under strange circumstances. Nobody knew for sure, but Tyler said he'd been there once before with some college friends. Said it was a rite of passage for anyone into urban exploration. So of course we were in. It was me, Mason, Tyler, and two other guys, Eli and Devin. We piled into Tyler's busted-up Jeep around 9 p.m. on a Friday night. The air was cold and the sky was cloudless. That kind of clear night where the stars feel like they're watching you. The ride out there took about 40 minutes. We parked in this empty lot behind a rundown park. Everything was pitch black except for the faint orange glow of a street lamp flickering near the edge of the lot. "You sure this is the spot?" Mason asked. Tyler grinned. "Yep. The hospital's about a 10-minute walk through those woods." The woods. Let me tell you, they weren't just regular woods. The trees looked dead even though it wasn't winter. No leaves. Just long, spindly branches like fingers reaching out. And it was quiet. Too quiet. No bugs, no birds. Just the crunch of our boots on dry leaves as we made our way in. We took a narrow dirt path that cut through the trees. Eventually, we reached a chain-link fence that had been cut open near the bottom. We crouched down and slipped through, and there it was, Ravenshade Hospital. The building loomed over us like a sleeping giant. 5 stories tall, all the windows either shattered or covered in grime. The front doors were chained shut, so Tyler led us around to the side where a basement-level window had been broken open. "One at a time," he whispered. I let the others go first. I was already feeling nervous, but I didn't want to chicken out. Finally, I crouched, crawled through the window, and landed with a splash. The floor was wet and sticky. I don't even want to guess what it was. "Gross," I muttered. We were in some kind of storage area. Old shelves, rusted filing cabinets, a wheelchair tipped over on its side. The air smelled like mold and iron. Every breath felt thick in my lungs. We all turned on our flashlights and stuck close together. Mason and I stayed near the back while the others led the way. We crept through the basement, our footsteps echoing down the halls. The walls were stained yellow and peeling. Some doors were hanging off their hinges. Others had been barricaded shut from the inside. Every so often, we'd hear the building creak, deep, slow groans like it was alive and trying to shift in its sleep. We found a stairwell and made our way to the second floor. That's when things started to feel wrong. There were rooms on both sides of the hallway, old patient rooms, I guess. Most were empty, but some still had beds in them. Mattresses ripped open, stuffing spilling out. Medical equipment rusted and tangled in cords. And writing on the walls, not graffiti. I mean, actual writing, sentences scribbled in what looked like charcoal or maybe something darker. Things like, "She never left the room. Don't trust the lights. I hear her crying." We all kind of laughed it off at first. Like, oh, people just trying to scare explorers like us. But deep down, I think we all felt it. That growing sense of dread crawling up our necks. Tyler and Eli started checking out one side of the floor. Devin wandered down another hallway alone. That left me and Mason poking around this old nurse's station near the middle. We were shining our flashlights into a supply closet when we heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. At first we thought it was Devin coming back, but when we looked out into the hallway we saw a figure at the far end. Not Devin, not anyone we knew. This person, this thing, was tall, thin, and completely still. Just standing there, half in shadow. We couldn't see a face, just the shape, like it was wrapped in dark fabric from head to toe. Mason whispered, "Who the hell is that?" The figure didn't move, didn't speak. Then, as we kept staring, it took one slow step forward, then another. We turned and ran. We didn't say anything, didn't wait for the others. We just took off in the opposite direction. As we ran, we heard the others shouting behind us, asking what was going on. We couldn't even answer. That's when the screaming started. It wasn't just any scream. It was a woman's scream, but high-pitched, raw, like her throat was tearing open. It echoed through the halls, bouncing off every wall, coming from everywhere and nowhere. We skidded to a stop, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Then came the thudding. Heavy boots or hooves slamming on concrete. Something was running, not toward us. Not away, just running. Mason grabbed my arm and whispered, "We have to get out now." We bolted down the stairs, yelling for Tyler and the others. Devin came sprinting out from one of the hallways, pale as a ghost. "I saw something," he gasped. "In the mirror." But there was no mirror. What? We didn't wait to unpack that. We all rushed back to the window we came in through, one after the other, scrambling out into the cold night air. As I climbed out, I swear I heard someone whisper my name. It wasn't any of my friends. We didn't stop running until we were back at the car. Tyler tried to start it, but the engine kept sputtering. Dead. Of course it was. Then we saw the lights in the woods. Not flashlights, these were dim, flickering yellow lights that bobbed slowly like lanterns being carried by people walking just beyond the trees. Except the trees weren't rustling. No footsteps, just light and silence. We sat in the Jeep, locked the doors, and waited. After what felt like an hour, the lights disappeared. Tyler tried the engine again, and this time it started. Nobody said a word the whole ride home. The next morning, we found scratches on the side of the Jeep. Deep ones, like fingernails or claws had scraped the metal. I never went back to Ravenshade. None of us did. We don't really talk about that night anymore. Mason changed schools the next year. Tyler moved out of state. Devin won't even return my texts. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that figure in the hallway, and the voice that whispered my name.